Hi, I'm Patty Dreier, Portage County Executive. Welcome to Portage County Matters. It's going to be a great show, and I'm so glad that you have tuned in. My guests today are Cathy Rhutasel and Teresa Kovach. They're both folks that work so hard out of our Department of Health and Human Services, specifically recruiting and nurturing foster families in our county. And so I can't wait to get to that topic. I want to start with a couple of quick updates from the county first, and then we'll get right to that important story for the show today. I want to begin with just a personal note. This week, the first week of October, is the week of the viewing of this show, and just only a few days ago, my father-in-law, Bud Dreier, passed away, and he was a World War II veteran. And one of the things that I just wanted to put a plug in for is for any of you that don't know about the honor flight and how honor flights help connect veterans, especially World War II or Korean War veterans, with the opportunity to see their monuments in Washington, D.C. It's really something you want to learn about. We're gathering some memorial funds together to host a veteran to be able to go on the honor flight. But again, I just encourage you, and I do that in honor of my father-in-law, I encourage you to learn more about the honor flight and what you can do to help veterans in your own neighborhood, in your own family, in your own community today. Now, about the county news, of course, for the last, I don't know how many months, we've talked about McDill Dam, and we are getting closer to the repair. A contractor to repair the McDill Dam has now been selected and approved by the city, the county, the village of Whiting, and the Lake District partners, also with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. And so the pre-construction meeting was held the first week of October, and repairs will begin very, very shortly. I mentioned last time, but I'll mention it again, County Road HH will be closed during construction, and the project is due to be completed about Thanksgiving time, with the pond refilled, at least I believe so, still in the spring of 2013. Staying on the construction theme, many of you have been inconvenienced by the County B road construction project. We were smoothing out some curves and making the road safer. It's about a 5-month project, and you probably know that better than I, any of you who had to detour around. But County Road should now be open as of the viewing of this show this month. And so I'm sure you're as excited about that as I am, as the Highway Department is. And the Collins Lake County I project will also be finished up this month. We've been working so hard on a very tight set of timelines related to numerous highway projects, and so I really have to commend the highway staff for all of their hard work in making this work and making it all fit so that we can use all of the opportunities for matching funding that's available to us. Regarding food service at the high-rise, that is the high-rise apartment building in downtown Stevens Point. Many of you have read about it or heard about it in the news. Maybe some of the listeners are residents at the high-rise. Citizens across all of Portage County have growing nutrition needs. That's probably no surprise to most of us during these times, especially elderly and disabled populations, and that's why we're working with our Portage County with our Portage County Aging and Disability Resource Center. We're working to stretch our nutrition services, resources across the land, across the whole county, not just the urban area where we have facilities like Lincoln Center, but also across the entire rural community as well. And so residents at High Rise will be served. Of course they're going to be served, but there are some different options that we're going to be using to serve them. And those folks will have meals delivered straight to their door, if that's what they wish. Hot meals on wheels delivered straight to their door, or to the downstairs eating area. We can deliver all the meals to that site where folks can eat together, because the social aspect related to eating is really important. Otherwise, folks can, and always have been able to, get free transportation over to Lincoln Center, which is only a few blocks away, maybe 5 or so blocks, and they can meet at the congregate meal site there. So there are 3 different options for folks at High Rise, and I really appreciate the cooperation of everybody who lives there and who is in our community around this, so that we can make sure that we're out in rural neighborhoods where they don't have Lincoln Centers just down the block to be able to have an option to eat at. So anyway, we're doing our best, and I am proud of what our ADRC Director Janet Zander's been doing on that issue. Alm Road. Some of you have heard about the case of alleged Social Security fraud out in eastern Portage County, a property where there's heaps of trash. You've probably seen it on the news, and it's located in the town of Amherst. We're moving forward with our health officer, Jenny Gaffke, and a number of other county staff members in both our Planning and Zoning Department as well as our Health and Human Services Department to abate the public health hazards and the other hazards on that property. So we're working on that. I'm sure you'll hear more in the news. Courthouse restoration, that continues. I mentioned it last month, but this month now we finished up one of the stairwells we were working on, and now we're on one of the entries, the northeast entry, as well as the Church Street entrance for the courthouse. And so that repair and restoration continues. This includes the ramp access to the front of the building, which is, we've got a substitute ramp open right now while we reconstruct the new ramp access. We're continuing to protect that marble from this 1950s construction and actually are polishing it with the help of a firm down in Milwaukee that does that work for the whole area here and restoring it to its original place and condition. So again, big job, big complicated job of historic restoration and moving our courthouse forward. So congrats to Todd Neufeld and the staff of the facilities department working hard on that with contractors. Another point I wanted to make to you is the ambulance contract negotiations are in process. We're working with the city of Stevens Point and the Amherst Fire District on that. And as most of you know, we have a countywide ambulance system, and the use of that system is continuing to grow as our population ages. So it's a big deal. It's a really big deal that we're working on. And I'm just looking forward to working ourselves through that so that we can assure public safety and ambulance excellence for years to come. And then finally, the 2013 budget. By the time the show airs in the first week of October in 2012, I'll have already presented to the Portage County Board of Supervisors the 2013 county budget. That takes place actually always around the first week of October. And you can find a copy of my budget presentation as well as the budget document itself. It's 100 pages or more, I don't even know. But I hope that you'll take a look, or you'll give my office a call, and we can make sure that you get access to looking at the budget and the budget presentation so that you can provide some input. This is your time now that you can help to refine this budget for 2013. I will tell you that it was a very difficult budget to put together, and it's getting tighter and tighter to try to meet the growing needs, especially during these economic times. And I've worked to keep the operating levy flat. And that means that we're basically holding the operational budget flat, which is a really huge deal, again, in times where fuel costs continue to increase, where there are additional statutory requirements from the state of Wisconsin, or mandates, I should say, that they're passing along to us, as well as the more intense needs due to our economic times. So I really congratulate the county staff on working really hard in helping us toe that line. So that is a segue to the topic of the day. The topic is foster family care in Portage County and the need for more foster families in our county. So welcome, Teresa. Welcome, Cathy. And I just so appreciate you being here. And even more than that, doing what you do every single day for the kids of our county. And it's kind of an emotional week, so I'll try not to be emotional when we talk about the future of children in our county. But anyway, Teresa, you are our Child Welfare Services Supervisor, and Cathy, you're our Foster Care Coordinator out of Portage County Health and Human Services, and I would like to have each of you take a turn to tell us a little bit about you. You've been serving for decades of service in our Health and Human Services Department. So, Teresa.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having us. Yep, my name is Teresa Kovach, and I'm currently the Child Welfare Services Supervisor at the Portage County Health and Human Services Department. I have worked for the county since 1993. I started as a Child Protective Services social worker, and I did direct service in families for 16 years. In 2009, there was an opportunity for me to advance to a supervisor position, and I've been supervising child welfare staff since 2009.
Yeah, pleasure, pleasure. And again, your Child Protective Services background has got to come into play when you're looking at protecting kids going forward here.
It certainly helps as I supervise my staff and listen to them talk through their cases to be able to have that personal experience or that work experience that I can draw upon, and I can understand some of the challenges that they face with their caseloads. And I think that it helps them as well to feel supported in the work if they know that the person who's supervising them has done the work and understands the pressures and the complications of it.
Mm-hmm. And Cathy, you've served what, over 3 decades? Honestly, wow. Were all of that time in the role that you're in, or how did it evolve?
I've done a number of things, which actually has been very helpful to me in what I do today, I think. I was actually hired as an economic support worker initially, then morphed into doing access for the agency, which included front-end acceptance of reports for child abuse and neglect, among other things. Then I worked for quite some time as an elderly services case manager and also coordinated our county's adult family care program. Then they combined adult family care and children's foster care, and for the last 23 years my focus has been children's foster care, solely children's foster care for about 15, I believe.
You are one of the staff faces for sure in that, and it's just so great because whenever we get another state award for a foster family, or whenever I see the articles, the letters to the editor as you're calling for more or acknowledging that it's a month to recognize foster families, I just, yeah, it's always Cathy. It's Cathy, 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 and I love that part. Hey, listen, so here we are. Many of the viewers may not know really truly what foster care is all about. So Cathy, maybe could you start us off with a bit of like the image? What is it like? What does it look like? What does a family look like? And why do we need foster care?
Well, we need foster care because children who are facing a safety issue or a crisis in their family have nowhere else to go. They don't have extended family members that are either available or appropriate, and there is a crisis in their family, and a decision has been made to remove them from their home according to the statutes we need to follow. When that happens, we need resources today. We need them now. There have been a couple of situations where there's been a high-profile case and people will call in and they'll say, we'd love to be the foster parents for this child. It's too late. That child's need was far more immediate. And that's why we ask families to consider doing this, to be available for those children and youth who really are in crisis. Foster care is by definition temporary. It is not the same as adopting. You are fostering other children. You're fostering someone else's children. You're working with those parents for the best interests of their own children. So you're working with the agency. You have us in your lives. You have me assuring that your family is functioning well and that you can take on this additional responsibility. But you also have us there to support you, to give you information, and to connect you with the resources you need to be able to do this well and to continue to function well as a family.
So what we have is a situation, let me just repeat back, and I'm going to keep drilling down a little bit. Sometimes specialists see things from a different way, I guess, and I'd like just the regular layperson out there to understand a little bit more about how it works. So what we have is a situation where there's a child or children, it could be siblings, right, that are in a troubled home of some kind, and there's been an order, a court order, right, a court order that says that these children can no longer stay in that home for this period, some period of time, till some certain benchmarks are met, I'm sure. And so we need to find a substitute place for those children to stay while they're staying in contact with and working with the help of Health and Human Services staff in partnership with the foster family and the kids to move through some of those benchmarks and to be able to be reunited someday. And so if one is, if one is considering the foster care issue and whether that fits their own life, if they wanted to step up and serve in this way, it's a different kind of volunteer support that we're looking for. What do they need to think about? I know that we have a need in Portage County, and you can talk about statistics. Whichever of you would like to take the topic on.
Well, I can tell you right now that we're low on foster families right now. We have 39 families. Our high has been around 45. Of those 39, we have 6 homes that only provide respite to other foster families or families facing stress at home to keep them together. We have 1 home that provides only emergency care, So if it's at night or after hours or something comes up during the day and we need some time to kind of sift through all the issues to figure out what the options are, they are there. So of those remaining 32 homes that provide what we call full-time foster care, we have about 23 that are working with what we would term younger children, birth to 10 or 12, and only 9 that are licensed for that age 10 or 12 to 18. For the foster families themselves, you know, it is a combination of volunteer work and agency right-hand man. Because without foster families, we can't do the work that we are mandated to do.
So, Teresa, talk about the bigger issue here. What happens if we don't find that we have the right number, if you would, of local Portage County foster homes for Portage County children?
Okay, so if we don't have a local resource for children, it's very important to place children locally because you want to keep them in their schools, you want to keep them connected with their medical providers, with their mental health providers if they have them, and you want them to be able to have regular and frequent contact with their parents because we're working on reunification, and so it's very difficult to do that if we can't have the child placed locally so that we can continue to access those services. So if we have a situation where we don't have a local resource, then what we're forced to do is to contact other agencies, other child placing agencies who are typically outside of our immediate area, and ask them if they have foster home resources, and this would be called treatment foster care. And so we may be looking at having to place children outside of our community because maybe the closest treatment foster home is 60 miles from here or 70 miles from here, which then makes the service provision, giving services to families, much more difficult because we now have to close that gap between where that child is physically placed and all the things that they need to be working on to be able to reunite with their family.
So you would have, in that situation, if you have to put a child in a home 60 miles away, then that child is further from other very important supports in his or her life, right? Friends, teachers, counselors. In addition to that, not only making it more difficult that way, you've now distanced the child further from the family that is a Portage County family that is working to reunify. So when you need to get folks together, they'll be in the presence of each other as they work through things. It's not, you know, that they don't get to see their kids. So now you've created extra challenges that direction, and then furthermore, the staff then, in staying in contact with the status of the child and the family, there's additional time and travel and expense. Exactly. So it's really important as we look at this issue here in Portage County that we do our best to try to take care of our own, if you would. And I think that's really what foster care is about. Can you talk a little bit about what kinds of issues are arising in families and what the trends are showing us? You know, why are there growing needs for foster families in our county, but also probably many other counties as well?
I think it's a combination of factors, but certainly we're in tough economic times. So the more financial pressures, the lack of supports that families have to meet their children's basic needs, the stress that they may be under trying to find employment, trying to keep a roof over their head, it leads families in directions that they otherwise might have not been. They might have not been in that place if they weren't feeling all of those pressures. You know, we're dealing with families who are struggling with ways to cope with that, and sometimes it's not healthy ways. So they might be turning to alcohol or drugs to try to cope with the way that they're feeling, or they're not being able to provide what they need for their children. And so we're really looking at trying, and sometimes it can be mental illness on the part of a parent, and they don't have the resources to adequately address that because they need to get to appointments, excuse me, or they need to see a psychiatrist. So we need to be able to support them in meeting those needs so that they can resume care of their children. So the families that we're seeing in this time tend to be very complex families. They don't just have one issue or problem that they're dealing with. They have multiple issues that they're dealing with. And so what a caseworker, social worker is doing is trying to figure out what all those needs are and bringing together services to address those, while at the same time keeping them in touch with their children and working through some of those problems with their children. With reunification of the family is the primary goal.
Cathy, if families are thinking about, or if an individual who's watching the show is thinking about the possibility of, is this right for me? Could I maybe? Could you talk about what are the qualifications? What do you look for? What's the process? And what are the benefits?
The qualifications are multiple. Your home needs to meet safety and space requirements, including some additional levels of security, how you store certain things in the house, what you lock up, those sorts of things.
Like medicines, for example, I'm sure.
Perfect example. Your family undergoes a home study, which for folks who have adopted, it's almost identical. It's an in-depth analysis of your family, how it functions, areas where you have stressors, areas that you have strengths. And it's a bit invasive, and you need to be comfortable with that. We also need to assure that you go through the appropriate pre-licensing training, training after licensing, and ongoing training, because education is just simply so important to be able to meet those complex needs that Teresa talked about, to be able to understand sometimes the whys, to be able to understand and be able to develop competencies on, okay, here's the why, now what do we do?
Skills,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
What would the length of time be for the training, for example?
Well, some training has to be done prior to even a licensing decision. Within the first 2 years of licensing, you need to complete a 30-hour foundation course. And minimally every year, foster parents, each licensed foster parent needs to have 10 hours of approved training.
So we have foster families, as you mentioned, what, 39. What's the length of time that some of these foster families have been foster families?
Well, I have some that I believe were licensed last month initially, and I have our most senior foster family have been licensed for, I believe, about 28 or 29 years.
Wow. Wow. And what would be the length of time that someone would host, I'm just going to use that word, I hope that's okay, host a child in their home?
Go ahead.
I think that can really vary. It really depends on the situation. Sometimes we need a short-term placement while we try to identify a family member and make sure that their home is safe and appropriate for the child. So it may be a short-term stay while we're looking for another family resource for the child. For children that don't have those family resources, we might be looking at longer stays. It could be anywhere from 6 to 12 months for families. And sometimes beyond that, if families aren't able to make changes that are needed so that their child can be in their home safely, then those stays can extend while the agency or the caseworker continues to work with the family to correct the things that led to that child being placed out of home.
So we have a situation where somebody steps up, and this is such a unique volunteer role because they're opening their home and their whole life to embrace this child as their own, really, in a manner of speaking, for whatever period of time it is, until that child can be reunited with their family. And we especially need folks to be able to give some extra cares to the middle and high school age students. So that's a particular area, if any viewers are interested in really stepping up, that's where we have an absolutely acute need, right? But what kinds of benefits financially? I mean, this costs money to take a child into your home, and especially in these times. Let's talk about that.
Every foster family with a child placed in their home receives a monthly reimbursement. And it is considered reimbursement because it's compensating those families for a portion of their home utilities, for a portion of their transportation, for food, shelter, all of those issues which come with raising a member of your household. That is paid after the month services have been provided, and it is established using what they call a uniform foster care rate setting system in Wisconsin. So there's a very stipulated means of determining that rate, which starts with the base rate for the age of the child, and then it goes up from there based upon a child's specific needs.
Okay.
In addition to that, there are some other things. There is a one-time clothing allowance when children enter foster care to help folks kind of bring a child up to speed with whatever they need with their wardrobe. And And that can cover everything from places like Other Mothers to garage sales to whatever. As long as you have a receipt and can document and it's clean, appropriate clothing, that's fine.
Interesting. And one more time, the foster family members are not going it alone here. You're not being just asked to step up without extra supports. Let's talk about the supports and the agency. You know, the Department of Health and Human Services, you specifically are some of the folks that are out there working with these families. What could they expect for help along the way? Okay, they receive training, they have some financial allowances that go with the reimbursing for the costs of this kind of service. Beyond that, talk about respite, talk about how it fits in one's life.
There is respite available. Oftentimes, children will actually regularly see their families, and that's a built-in respite package, which is great. But that isn't always the case. And when that's not the case, and a foster family needs a break, or they have a commitment that foster children are not invited to or appropriate for, or whatever the case may be, we work with them on finding another one of our foster families to provide that for them. So that's an important piece. Sometimes it's just for the day, sometimes it's an overnight, it just depends. In addition to that, we are required to have a caseworker have monthly contact with the foster child, with the majority of those visits taking place in that foster home.
So if I am a foster parent, how frequent is my contact with you on an average day? Teresa, I call you Tisa, sorry, just know you for a lot of years.
Just to build on what Cathy said, we're required to make a visit in the home with the foster family and the child present at least once a month. But I can tell you from my contact with my social workers is that they're in much more frequent contact with foster families. Sometimes they're communicating, sometimes daily by email or telephone contact. So there's very much ongoing open communication and support, problem solving. How do I deal with this problem? How do I access this resource? And that's what social workers do. They know what's out there and they work to connect foster families with those resources so that the foster families can take care of their children, so that the caseworker can work on some of the problems that led to the child being out of the home.
Wow. There is, I know we only have a couple minutes left in the show. I just want to make sure I say a couple of things to sort of sum up here. Number one, we need foster families in Portage County for Portage County children, especially for middle school and high school age children. If you're interested, you just want to ask questions, you just want to explore if it's right for you, we're going to have the number or the contact information on the bottom of the website here, on the bottom of the frame here. And then there's also a website called fosterparentsrock.org. It's about turning a life around, and if you might be one of those kinds of folks to do that, it will change our future. Certainly no small endeavor here, and at the same time, so many have found rewards and benefits from that kind of service. And so to all of our foster families out there who are viewing this, thank you so much for what you do for all of us in our whole community every day by caring for those children, one or two at a time, whatever it is. And for you, Teresa, and you, Cathy, for what you do with your colleagues at Health and Human Services for this really important role. Now listen, next month we have Jenny Gaffke. I hope that will be joining us. She's our public health officer, another staff member who's working at our Department of Health and Human Services on these very important missions in Portage County. The topic of today on foster care is all about child welfare and the protection of children. And in the 2013 budget, I think if you'll go to the website, you'll take a look, you'll see that I have stepped up to help meet the growing mission for child welfare. And I can teach you more about what exactly we're doing in that realm if you want to give my office a call. And I hope you do. I hope you'll provide some input on that budget and help us by talking with your friends and family about becoming a foster care family or recruiting somebody else who can. Thanks. Thanks, everybody.